It's the Underpowered Hour. On this week's show, JLR announces their Defender Dakar Rally team. The new baby Defender is spied. And we talk about annoying jobs on your Land Rover. And now, without delay, here's the show. Welcome to the Underpowered Hour. I'm Steve Beres, mild-mannered television executive by day and Land Rover collector by night. You can find out more about our cars and what we're working on at theberescollection.com or follow us on Instagram at theberescollection. I'm joined, as always, by my good friend, Goss.
Thank you to everyone joining us today.
I'm the decorative door seal to Steven's functional door seal. I'm the damp shoe of podcasting, Ike Goss.
I own and operate Pangolin 4x4 in Springfield, Oregon, where we live and breathe Land Rovers. Check us out online on Facebook, Instagram at Pangolin 4x4. Let's get started.
All right, Ike. Well, this week in the Land Rover news, as I know you've been hotly anticipating the announcement of the rest of the Land Rover Defender Dakar Rally team for 2026. They have gone through and they have announced a variety of folks wearing different energy drink hats that will be driving the Defenders through the desert in Saudi Arabia this coming year.
This is quite the lineup.
Yeah. Is it Saudi Arabia? Where is it? Where's it taking place?
Typically, Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. That's going to be great. I'm excited. It's an interesting thing. Again, we're not sure there is a stock category necessarily. They may be the only entrants in this factory category or whatever that they've come up with.
That's what they're saying. They're saying it's a stock category, but I don't know what other production vehicles will be entering. Should we look that up? I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. We'll get the research team on that and see what other teams might be entering this. But what I previously thought was a co-driver, I guess, this guy, Rokas Bishmuka.
Just stop.
Yeah. He's being joined by a Spaniard, Aurelio Vidal, who is a very decorated multi-WRC and SSV champion and all kinds of stuff. So that's awesome. It's going to be good. He looks very capable. Doesn't have an energy drink hat, though. Is that something we should be concerned about?
I think so.
Yeah?
I think so.
And then, of course, Stefan Peter Hansel, who has won the Dakar 14 times. 14 times he's won the Dakar, which is pretty crazy. That guy is...
That was World War II, too.
That's right. He's 275 years old. Yeah. So...
resume from that guy.
Yeah. And joined by a gentleman that... Is his name Frenchman Matage? Or is he a Frenchman, Matage, and he's just got one name like Cher? I'm reading this article. I don't see a first or last name. I just see maybe his name is Frenchman. That would be very strange. Don't you think?
You could probably...
Frenchman Matage.
For the show, you could determine that in advance.
It's exactly. I could have very easily. But he's a motorcycle. He comes from the world of motorcycle racing, which is kind of interesting, off-road motorcycle racing, so...
That is,
if they have to
a
convert,
tough group. The motorcycle group is a tough one.
If they have to convert the thing into a thing, they have to convert the Defender into a motorcycle. Remember when Batman did that?
Yes. His car got damaged and he turned it into a motorcycle.
Yeah. I
remember the follow-up Mad Magazine article, which, Batman takes a motorcycle and turns it into a skateboard.
That's right. And then a skateboard into a pair of roller skates and just continually factors down. Yeah.
Down cycles.
It keeps down cycling.
Famous, a French guy that got a Citroen stuck in the desert and he took it all apart and turned it into a motorcycle and rode it out of the desert.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. That's
right. I remember that.
Pretty wild. The thing is in a museum.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that. That is pretty. That's That is clever. That's creative to get to the point where you're
It's
taking
pretty
your
interesting.
car apart.
Now, the problem is, like, when you Google pictures of it, it's just this French guy in his underpants in the desert, like,
Right. Yeah.
working on car parts.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
We've all been there. And then finally, the third team is a South African named Sean Bierman, and he will be competing with Sarah Price. And she is 2024's best rookie, apparently, from Dakar, I assume. And so they're both FIA World Rally Raid champions, and that's how it's going to be. That's the team, those 6 individuals. I will also highlight that the Frenchman gentleman also no energy drink hat. So, but otherwise it's divided equally between Red Bull and Monster Energy. So the South Africans, all Monster Energy.
So I'm reading about the vehicles categories because I'm curious. And so this year cars will be divided into 2 categories. T1, which is the ultimate, that's cross-country vehicles, prototypes, 4x4, 4x2, etc., whatever, basically whatever you want.
Yeah, you just like no holds barred.
So that's T1. T2 is the stock production-based cross-country vehicles with minimal modifications. Now, there is no information about other entrants to the T2 category.
Right.
Other than Land Rover. So
minimal modifications. I imagine those are FIA safety modifications.
Yeah,
It's
you
gonna
gotta have a
roll
cage, you gotta have seats, you gotta have this and that.
Yeah. You know, and that makes sense. I mean, you do have to have that stuff. I mean, that's not performance. If anything, it's probably performance, neutral or slightly decreases performance because it's heavy. A roll cage is a big, heavy lump, but you need it. You have to have it.
So the T2 cars are homologated, basically.
They are homologated.
So they have to have
cars,
1,000 identical units at minimum. So
well, that's fine. They have the Octa is. Hopefully, it'll make 1,000 units by then. I think it actually has already. I think
that's what their plan is to do. So lack of promotion and entries for the T2 class Dakar. There's a Reddit thread on this. So I'm curious if any of our listeners know more about the T2 class and who is entering this year, competing against Land Rover. We'd like to hear about it.
Maybe we can even reach out to our good friends at Land Rover and see if they have somebody who can come onto the show and talk to us about it.
That'd be amazing, actually.
I mean, I would be thrilled to talk to
Yeah, Mark, the head of
some of the
Defender, he would
drivers.
be a good guy to talk to about that. He might
maybe
know.
we can get an interview with Stefan Peter Hansel.
Stefan Peter Hansel. That's actually a good
That'd be
idea.
Pretty awesome. I'd love
Have
to talk to that.
I think he sleeps like in a coffin covered in the
He
earth
does.
of his homeland.
Yes, and like the Winter Soldier, they wake him up every 11 months to race the Dakar.
Race the Dakar.
They have a little book, and it's got like a few different like code words into it that to activate him, and then he goes and races the Dakar. That's how it works.
That's pretty amazing. Yeah, we may have an entry into the Dakar. We'll just have to see how that goes.
So I'm planning on
You gonna be next year?
and maybe I don't know. We'll see. We'll have to see. I don't know.
I think
Maybe.
it's gonna happen. I think
Casually.
It's gonna happen. Casually.
Speaking of the Defender,
Yes.
which I know you're a fan of, baby,
What?
Land Rover Defender, delicious.
doing it?
The veal, if you
It's
will,
happening?
of Defenders, spotted in some camo. So we don't know what it is really, but they have posted some baby Land Rover photos. You can
They
look
just
all
keep
over
it
the
in
place.
a smaller pen, restrict its movements.
That's exactly right, and feed it nothing but butter. That's what makes it taste so tender. But you've got yourself what looks like, I don't know. I don't even know. You said it kind of looks like the Freelander. I don't think it looks that good. I don't think it looks as good as a Freelander.
Looks that good.
No, I don't think it looks as good as a Freelander. It's
What elements are you objecting to?
I really don't like right now the line of the back of the car where it looks like it's very Pathfinder, or I'm sorry, it's very like a van looking in the back. It's got a protruding rear bumper in a way that looks very undefender. Valences that go all the way wrapping under the car. That's very Range Rover-y, right? To have the, door valences and stuff like right
If you look at the
underneath
Defender 90, it has like that sort of that cladding under the door.
Yeah, I
and
suppose so.
Around
Yeah.
the back bumper. Now, what I think separates a lot of Defender looking vehicles is the back of the. It's usually very flat. It's like,
Yep.
and this car, it's got a slope to it, but then that slope is interrupted by what appears to be a spoiler above the rear window. right? It's got some kind of.
It is.
Like,
It's got like a
aerodynamic
Range Rover Sport kind of spoiler situation going on.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
sort of like a shark fin antenna
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
But that flatness to the back of the car, I think that's what gives that abrupt corner on the rear sort of its defendery look, which this vehicle is, in my opinion, lacking.
I agree. And if you look against the rock face on the right side, we're looking at the back of the car here, you can see that there's the sort of shoulder from a traditional sort of Land Rover kind
Hip.
of step.
But because the door is so tall, the
Yeah.
hip isn't where you would expect it,
it
to
doesn't
be.
look right.
Like
yeah,
on
it
a
doesn't- like I said,
classic-
it's more of a shoulder than a hip. It's not right.
Exactly. So on a classic Defender, you have like an area below the windows, but above the hip.
Yep.
But the hip just goes right into the window.
It essentially looks like the body line of the bottom of the window.
Yeah.
If you didn't know that it was meant to, and maybe it isn't, but to emulate that feature, remember, dating back to the Series 2, it was, it's a, I don't know.
Now, here's a question for you. Do you think, because this is a mule and they've got it sort of decked out in a wrap that sort of interrupts its lines, this is a vehicle that's on test, do you think that the cladding and bumpers and other elements of this vehicle are designed to interrupt its factory looks? Like, do you think this is what it looks like? Is this a good indication of what it's going to be?
I don't think so. I think this is early enough in the process that this is probably nothing. I mean, if you remember the Freelander, the original Freelander, a delivery van it had the body of a, what kind of a van was that? Starts with an M.
Well, I think in that particular case, it was actually the body of a production vehicle.
Yeah, it was.
But the underpinnings of the Freelander when they tested it, and everybody was like, "Oh, it's going to be horrible," et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, it was, but.
This, I don't know. I don't know how much of this is like overcladding on the actual sort of prototype body and how much of this is just literally a mule. I do wonder because, they have, you said the Defender 90 kind of evocative in some ways, because they've really limited production of the 90 now down to just V8s here in the US. Yeah. I wonder if that's in preparation, sort of getting the market settled for a Defender Sport, whatever they're going to call it, right? I mean, the fact that it's got that rear spoiler kind of situation definitely gives you sport vibes, right? That's what they do with the Range Rovers. They have those little spoilers. That's one of the things that denotes sport Range Rover versus regular. And it's interesting. I wonder if, because in the Range Rover Sport, again, we've said this in the past, right? Very rarely is the car actually sporty when you call it a sport. It's usually means like diet or like caffeine free or like slightly
the
shittier.
Bronco Sport. Yeah.
Right, exactly. That's just a smaller
trim
shittier
level.
car. Even Discovery, right?
More of a sport slugger chief,
like a well done Sport, yeah. Whereas the Range Rover Sport is like a genuine performance Range Rover, like it's a high performance car, but not so for the Discovery. And I guess the question is, will it be for the Defender? It sounds like this is going to be an electric version, which means they'll probably never actually make it. So we'll see. We'll have to see.
Yeah, there's a lot of headwinds in the electric vehicle market. The sort of fake six-pack abs that it has on the side of the vehicle.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting.
I do. Yeah. It's an interesting car. We'll see. Speaking of interesting cars, back to another current Land Rover Defender. Guess one towed a giant crane. Apparently, a new Land Rover Discovery
Defender.
The article says, Land Rover Defender 110 tows a truck carrying a massive crane. So there you go.
So where did it tow it?
I don't know. I think just out of a ditch. I think it looks like it fell off a road or something.
Got stuck and the Defender came along and pulled it out?
Pulled it out, yeah. Which, to be fair, is a long-standing tradition of Land Rovers pulling super heavy things, right? If you remember back when the all-new Discovery came out, the Discovery 5, they did a video where it towed a train. You remember that? They got it hooked up to a train and it towed a train.
I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, it towed a train for a little bit. And of course, back in the day, they used to be like, feats of strength for all kinds of different Land Rovers. So it's a storied tradition.
I think that's true. You've always had that in marketing. I can remember a Chevy square body. They pull up like a Boeing 747 with it.
Yep. And the Toyota Tundra, of course, towed the shuttle across the bridge here in Los Angeles for no reason.
I mean,
because apparently it was too heavy. It was too heavy on its like little roller skate things that they were moving around on. So they're like, well, we'll get a Toyota Tundra to tow it.
Well, so that's it. If you run a towing business, get yourself a Land Rover Defender.
Get yourself a Land Rover Defender, yeah. So that's pretty good. It's pretty good stuff.
Speaking of head, the Queen's Range Rover, I understand, went to auction.
Yes. You know, I have often said I've always wanted a Queen Range Rover. I had an opportunity to buy the one that she and Prince Philip drove Michelle and Barack Obama in, and I've regretted it to this day because it was really cheap, and then I know since it's resold for a huge amount of money. But that seems to be the trend around queenly Range Rovers because holy moly, did this one go for a lot. If you remember a couple episodes ago, we talked about this one crossing the block, and it has in fact sold. And what was the sale price of this bad boy?
240,000 pounds from what I've read.
Whoa! That is a lot. That is a lot of cash. What is that, like $500,000 US?
I can't imagine paying that much from a Range Rover unless the Queen is still inside.
Still inside of it. Yeah. Was she somehow entombed in this Range Rover?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. All right. Was one of the corgis entombed in it? That might be a consolation prize.
Possibly.
Okay.
Possibly.
Yeah. I mean, they are... Now, was it a review car or was it a personal car? Is it a green one or a claret one?
I believe it is green. Let me see if I can find the...
Is it green?
Ooh, sapphire blue, maybe?
Sapphire blue, yeah. There's the blue ones, too. We also have to ask Michael Bishop how often, because the one I've seen one in reality at the factory once as it was about to be delivered, and it was blue. It was a special blue color. I think it was... And the interior was incredible, and it had the Windsor crest. They were stitched into the headrests.
Well, the picture in this article shows it as green.
It's a green one, yeah,
but it's described as blue, so I'm not really sure.
Yeah. Okay, but yeah, because the ones that they're like personal use ones are green, and the review cars are that claret red, right? Is that how it works?
I'm not an expert, but I think that's true.
I think that's true. We'll have to ask
this one appears to be green in all of its photos.
Okay.
Has 120,000 miles on it, and it's a 2006 maybe.
Nice. Okay.
Somebody put a lot of miles on it.
Interesting. Yeah, because that's $120,000 for a royal car. That's a lot. Now, was this owned by someone in between the Queen and its
That's
current?
unclear because they only show it with pictures of her, right?
Of course. Yeah.
Tonga green over sand Oxford leather, according to the second article.
Interesting.
That has been known to be favored by the royal household.
Yes. Yeah, they like the green. They like that green. Interesting. Well, there you go. Well, hopefully that new owner enjoys it very much and can get the corgi stains out of that light interior.
Does have the dog guard for the corgis.
Yeah, of course it does.
Installed.
Yeah, you gotta have that. The best thing about it was a Land Rover 110 that we drove around in at the Pebble Beach last year was the Battleship linoleum that was installed on the rear cargo space floor specifically for the corgis, so they didn't mess up the load space.
I mean, every time I have gotten a car that has been owned by an older woman, it just has like butterscotches in the seats. Like it never has like this sort of provenance. But
cool mods. Yeah.
Pretty interesting. Those things are in demand.
Well, speaking of butterscotch in the seats, it brings us to our topic for this afternoon, which is annoying jobs on your Land Rover.
Oh, man. And there's a few of them.
Oh my God. I am unfortunately sitting on top of a small pile of them because I'm reluctant to deal with them because they are a pain in the ass. And it's interesting because, there are some jobs on the Land Rovers that, I like to think the factory really thought about how these cars were used and where they would be maintained and therefore made this stuff pretty easy. For the average mechanic to do, or even an owner, the manuals, of course, for the, Series 1, certainly, but the later 2s and Series 3s were very extensive. And in fact, the African owner's manuals for the cars were so they were almost workshop manuals and lots of stuff. Real easy to do yourself and to just kind of keep the car in tip-top shape and running well. And these were, I think meant for countries that didn't necessarily have your local Land Rover dealer down the street that you'd be able to go and do things. But then again, there are a few jobs that are an enormous pain in the dick. I have one of those on the old Ted, our favorite, not a 6-cylinder. And it is in fact with that 6-cylinder.
I think they're, generally speaking, Land Rover did a good job of making the vehicles incredibly easy to service, and, they're pretty well thought out, and their technical literature is pretty explicit in terms of how to get things done and do things in an efficient way. But, with so many variations and being comprised of so many parts, there's bound to be a few jobs which are just really unpleasant, and let's talk about some of those today. You say you've got one with your six-cylinder. What's the one with your six-cylinder? What's going on there?
It is. Anyone who knows the six-cylinder well knows that it has a tendency to burn valves, especially if you run the car at high RPM for extended durations of time.
Which is kind of how they were designed to be driven, to be honest.
It's exactly right, yes. Yeah. And in fact, it works great. It's a fantastic car on, mine with a Roamer overdrive goes 70 miles an hour all day long and is quite happy to do it. Plenty of power up there and really pleasant car to drive at those speeds where,
engine.
Yeah, hard to brake, but even with the power-assisted brakes, but whatever. You just got to give yourself time. Unfortunately, that means in order to keep those valves from burning, you need to spend some time adjusting the valves, making sure that they are, they're clearanced correctly and, that everything is sealing up as it should, because, a little too much exhaust gas leaking around and it will cause nothing but pain. The only issue is getting to those valves. Of course, if you have a regular, 4-cylinder engine, relatively straightforward. Pop off the valve cover and, get in there with your feeler gauge and go through the process, and you're done in maybe takes half an hour. Not a huge job at all. You can even do it in the field if you feel like something is not as it should be.
This is true. This is true. We've done some work on these 6-cylinder cars, and I really like that engine, how it sounds, and they drive really nice when they're good. They're good.
Yes.
Very good. It's packaged in the same engine bay as the 4-cylinder, and the bulkhead is recessed actually quite a bit to accommodate the extra length of the engine. The front of the engine is basically in the same place as the 4-cylinder engine is, so most of the engine goes towards the back of the car. And it kind of makes like a little cave back there. The engine sticks into that cave, and you kind of got to reach back in there to adjust those valves or do some other things. And almost a lot of things on the 6-cylinder require the removal of the air cleaner, which is sort of bolted to the top of the car, top of the engine.
Famously looks like a muffler.
It does look muffler. So, those things make it a little bit more time consuming to service.
For sure.
The one thing that complicates it on the 6-cylinder is on a 4-cylinder, it's an overhead valve, or at least the 4-cylinder 2.25 liter engines are a valve. So all the valves are under one cover, and you can adjust them all from the top. And the 6-cylinder is inlet over exhaust. So to adjust all the exhaust valves, it's under the exhaust manifold. So not only is it kind of back in the engine compartment, but it's under the manifold. And to really adjust them accurately and easily, you might have to remove the exhaust manifold, which doesn't make it a simple job. No. You can adjust it without removing it, but you need three, possibly 4 wrists.
Yes. Yeah, you need several universal joints in your wrist to be able to get down in there. And I have yet to figure out if there would be a way to get a tool or something that you could manipulate in such a way that, you could get it in. In fact, and Linus and I, who's had one of these cars as well, have talked about it many times, but the idea of the easiest and quickest way to do it, or maybe the least painful and most accurate way, is to take the side wing off as well as the exhaust manifold. Maybe if you have the wing off the car, you might be able to get in there with the exhaust manifold still on, because you just have the ability to get into it completely sideways. But definitely the wing should come off, and probably the exhaust manifold needs to come off. And so, as you can imagine, it was a job that was not done very often when the vehicle was new. And because of that, the engine was often swapped out because of burned exhaust seats. And that caused, I think, a lot of I don't know how many surviving Nadas there are, not a lot of them, maybe 600 or so of the original 800, I think. And then of that, a very small percentage still has its original Land Rover engine in it. Yeah. I don't know, maybe a quarter of them, something like that.
Yeah,
and it's also largely because of this.
There's also a period of time where Land Rover parts were harder to get. Pre-internet parts were a bit harder to get, and I think a lot of them got swapped out for Chevys in that period of time.
Yep.
The burn exhaust valve would sit for a while, and then somebody was like, "Oh, that's pretty good shape otherwise, but can't get any parts, so I'm going to put a Chevy motor in it."
Put a Chevy motor in it. Yeah.
So that's commonly what happened to those cars. But really, pleasure to drive. Now, there's a couple other jobs on that 6-cylinder that are not as fun. One is the throttle linkage. There's like a plastic bushing in the throttle linkage that's behind the motor. That one can be frustrating to get to as well. There's a couple tricky things about those, but generally, almost everything's the same as the 4-cylinder cars. Yep. Now, in terms of other Land Rover vehicles or Land Rovers, series Land Rovers in general, there are some other jobs that they can be super frustrating, and I kind of want to spend a few minutes talking about some of those. One of my least favorites is spring bushings. Chassis is a real advantage until you have a bushing that goes all the way through it, and especially in the front, because the front one is all the way through the entire thickness of the chassis, and so it's supposed to be an interference fit so that the bushing is very solidly in place.
It sure is.
It's really, not only is it difficult to get the old one out, it's also difficult to get a new one in, and a number of things can happen that cause it to be difficult, right? So in terms of removing the bushing, you've got two metal sleeves separated by a rubber bushing in between them, and both of those metal sleeves need to come out of the chassis in order to fit a new one in. And usually it's the outer one that gives a real headache,
100%,
right?
Yeah.
The outer one, it can look almost invisible after being in there for 40, 50 years.
That's exactly
so
right,
the where does the bushing stop and the chassis begin? That's one of the difficulties, is determining that, and it's usually just a almost imperceptible little seam.
Yes.
And they've often been almost like welded with time and rust
welded in there.
All that sort of thing. Get them out is a real challenge, and there's a few methods that people use to do it, but all of the methods are potentially damaging to the chassis. So, there's a number of chassis bushing tools that people have designed and developed to push them through. And those have the potential to damage the frame because putting enough force on that outer sleeve to remove it can actually damage the frame, because it's been stuck in there for so long. Yep. So you got to be really
you're putting
careful
pressure on the back side of the frame to push on the front side of the bushing, or vice versa. And I've seen people that have, because it's sort of like a fork kind of thing. The one that I've seen that goes on the back have actually managed to drive that into the chassis as opposed to pushing the bushing out. They've pulled the clamp into and sort of waffled the frame there.
Now, you can gradually remove the bushing. Now, getting the inner sleeve out and the rubber is not too bad, because what you can do is just set the bushing on fire.
That's right.
And it'll ruin the vulcanizing between the rubber and the outer sleeve, and you can usually, once it's been on fire for 3 to 4 minutes, your results may vary. You can usually push it out of the chassis, and don't do that in an enclosed space, because it's burning rubber is not good for you.
The fumes that come off those, and also the 40 years plus of grime and grease and things.
Pretty gross, and have a fire extinguisher handy for sure.
Yeah. But really clean the chassis really well around there.
So you don't fire.
Ask me how I know. But it is surprising how much of that car will start on fire underneath. This is amazing.
Once that's done, once that's removed, then you've still got the outer sleeve to deal with, and a lot of people use a hacksaw or a sawzall to saw through that.
Body panel saw. Yep.
Also an incredibly frustrating process, because you have to saw it at a perfectly horizontal angle, right? It has to be perfectly parallel with the bushing. Otherwise, you end up with a little hump in the middle of material, and it will not come out. Will not come out. And you have to saw it all the way through without sawing through the chassis.
Yeah. You can't hurt that because the bearing, the bushing seats are welded into the chassis. I mean, they're part of the chassis. They're assembled into the chassis. It's essentially a sleeve that's welded into the frame. And, oh, God forbid you cut through or into that. I mean, trying to weld in there and then rebore it smooth. Oh, my God. No,
it's a real challenge. So, once you carefully saw through the outer sleeve, it does come out with a punch pretty easily, but you have to saw through it 100%. Like, there can't be any little webs of material that you've forgotten. So that makes it challenging. And once you have that all out, you'll find that the new bushing doesn't want to go into the hole because they're made at like slightly different tolerance. So there's measuring, there's honing of the chassis bore, there's putting the bushings in the freezer to come down. There's like all these methods to get the new bushing to go in there.
Yeah.
But if you push it halfway in and it stops, like, because the trick is you got to make sure that, there is a slight interference fit, that you don't have to put so much pressure on the new bushing, pushing it into the chassis that it deforms.
That's right.
And mushrooms a little, then your shackles don't fit and you can't get it to move in either direction. And then you have to start the process all over again. So it's a really annoying job to do those chassis bushings. And unless you've done it a few times, it can be a real headache.
Well, and even if you've done it multiple times, all it takes is one particularly stubborn one to waste the better part of an afternoon.
A really unpleasant job. Do
you like the porta power in that space?
We have a C-clamp porta power that we use to push them in and out, but we do measure the chassis bore and the bushing. Some of those bushings, they come with a paint or corrosion inhibitor. And we often remove that because that can kind of stick the bushing in the bore. Yeah. So we definitely do remove that, and sometimes we'll even have to like stick those bushings in the lathe and polish them up a little bit so that they go in the chassis nicely. Now, the corollary argument to this is just install polyurethane bushings. Just stop messing around with these metal sleeves and rubber and all this stuff. Yeah. And the polyurethane bushings are way easier. You can basically install them with your hands. You push them in. They don't tend to last as long, and they're a little harsher in terms of the ride a little bit.
They are.
And,
they are.
Land Rover intended, if you read the workshop manual, for the inner sleeve of the bushing to be serrated so that it grasps onto the shackle. When you tighten the shackle bolts, it's actually pinching and holding the shackle to that inner bushing. And it's part of the suspension, both, in the compression and the droop. Yeah. And so it twists the bushing twists the rubber in both inner and outer sleeves are vulcanized to the rubber. Right. Yeah. So you don't get that sort of action when you install the polyurethane bushings, but
everything just kind of.
If you want to save yourself a lot of headache, the polyurethane bushings are easy to install and easy to replace.
And in some high performance situations, polyurethane is better. But in any case where you're using a series, a shackle style hanger, I can't imagine that's a high performance thing. So
now some vehicles, they have a removable like bushing sleeve. You can like take it out of the car. It bolts into the chassis. Yeah. Some Land Cruiser models I think have something similar to that, and that's kind of nice because you can take it out and work on it on the bench. Yeah. But the Land Rovers, unfortunately, it's stuck in the chassis, so you're always working under the car, and it's not my favorite job for the.
And in most climates, and with most use of a modern series Land Rover, you're probably never going to replace them again. So, it's worth doing it right and getting it in there, and it's a huge pain. But
another kind of annoying job on a Land Rover that's not, it's not too bad, but it is fiddly. It's really fiddly. Is installing the screws. There's 3 of them that secure the speedometer cable to the transfer case. That is a job that really frustrates a lot of people, and there's a couple reasons for that. One is it's just hard to access.
It's in a bad place.
It's behind the parking brake. Yeah. So it's in a sort of a little bit of a recess. There's not a lot of room to work and access it very easily. And it's even worse if you have an overdrive on, because you've got to kind of snake it past the overdrive and behind the parking brake. And there's 3 tiny little screws, and the screws are 2 BA sized. And over time, if the transmission's been removed or the cable's been replaced, one of those screws, or maybe all of those screws, have been lost, and because they're thread form, they've been replaced, usually with 1032, something like that. Something close, but not quite.
Yeah. Just enough to mar in there.
Just enough to just be a real pain. So it's got like a washer that goes over the cable, and that washer, and just holding that washer and holding the cable and getting those tiny little screws in place, and you can't quite put a screwdriver on it. And originally you would have used a 2BA, like a socket.
Yeah.
And you've got to have like a 2BA socket with a universal joint, and they're so short. The screws are so short that if you just put the screw in the socket, it's just going to fall down in the bottom of the socket. So you've got to kind of put a few 2BA nuts
in there,
down in there.
Yep.
Oh man, it's a real headache. You can replace them with 2BA screws. So that's another frustrating job that's just fiddly and annoying and can be a real pain. And it is the reason why many speedometers don't work, because it's just not even hooked up. People just got I've seen so many cables that are just zip tied to the side of the transmission because it was just a real annoyance.
Yeah, they're just not. It's like, you don't need it. I mean, it's fine.
It's fine.
You don't need to know how fast you're going. Not that fast is the answer. But, almost always.
Those screws and that job they're a pain. If you need those screws, we do have them, but they're a pain. They're like 2BA by 1/4 inch. There's only a 1/4 inch long screw.
That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all.
Super fiddly.
Well,
what's a job that you hate?
Speaking of things in and around the transmission, so on my 80-inch, I have a little bit of a starting issue that has arisen, which is some grinding and some slipping in the startup procedure, and that can be one of two things, both kind of a huge hassle. One, obviously the starter itself could be starting to go. Either the launch of it, the solenoid that shoots it out there, is maybe not getting it all the way out, or the gear, most likely, is starting to wear and strip, or probably the worst of the two is starting to get wear or even missing teeth on the flywheel gear, and that's on the ring gear. That's
the
bad.
80-inch. I love 80 inches. They're one of my favorite Land Rover variants, but the starter and the ring gear suck.
Yeah, it's real bad. It's real
bad. They
suck.
There's a reason they upgraded those things on the later cars, and that is a really frustrating aspect of those early vehicles. And I will say they generally last a long time.
Yeah, for sure.
But when they go bad, they're really annoying. The starter is got so many pieces in the drive mechanism, like 400 little shims in there, and there's a rubber coupling bushing, and there's all this crap in there. There's little special washers, and it's horrible. That part of it is horrible, and just making sure that you have all of them lined up and the right order, and they're all there, because a lot of times people come back together in the wrong order, or they're missing pieces,
missing something.
But that's not even the worst part. Is really removing it, because the oil filter housing on
right there,
the 80-inch, is bolted to the block. It's actually clamped to the block. It's got a metal strap clamp that bolts it in with 4 on some models and 3 on some others. 3 bolts, and it's just down in the engine bay, and it's inevitably just incredibly greasy and gross. And it has these lines that come out of the block, and making sure those are threaded in but not cross-threaded. And they're hard lines, and they're not very easy to take all that out before the starter will come out.
That's
and
right.
The starter's
you have to empty the oil out of the car, remove the entire oil filter system, not break any of the copper lines that are specially wound and all of that sort of stuff. And then you can take the starter out, only to find that it's not the starter, that in fact it's the ring gear.
Which, and the starter, of course, the starter's like 2 feet long, and it weighs like
9,000 pounds.
40 pounds. So don't on your face if you're under the car. A friend of mine lost some teeth doing that.
I'll bet. Yeah, it is. But it's the size of a Chipotle burrito and weighs equal amounts. It is a hefty little monster, for sure.
That is not a fun job.
If, in fact, that is okay, which now you've gone through all of that labor to find out that it's actually the ring gear on
to be fair,
the motor.
To be fair, you could have inspected the ring gear through the timing port on the other side of the motor,
and that's the
prior to removing the starter.
Yeah, that's
so you could have done that. But that, which brings me to another annoying job, which is timing those engines with the timing marks on the flywheel. But
boy,
the ring gear on an 80-inch is just a special little guy.
It really is. And of course, the only way to replace the ring gear is to completely remove the flywheel from the car, machine it off.
Yes.
and press on and weld a new one to that and rebalance it and all of that sort of stuff. It takes a brave machine shop to go through all of that because it's,
we have
again,
a big lathe. You got to have
huge
a big lathe
pain in the ass for those
turn that
guys. Also like a huge pain in the ass.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
Just
Now we have we have the embarrassment of riches around here to have all of these aircraft machine shops because we're so close to the Lockheed Martin up the road here, and so we have lots of little specialty aircraft that where
none of whom want to work on a Land Rover flywheel.
Do not want to work on car stuff at all. But thankfully, the one that I go to here, the guy is old enough that he thinks the Land Rovers are kind of swell and will begrudgingly do this work, but not on any kind of a significant time frame. Like he'll get to it,
someday.
But yeah.
Someday. Well, my condolences if you have a problem with your 80-inch starter and or flywheel and or chassis bushings and or
just
filter housing.
Go back to crank that thing. It's fine.
Those are just not fun jobs.
Yeah. And, it's one of those things. It's a labor of love, ownership of a vintage Land Rover. And, hey, most of the time, lots of fun. But,
even the stuff that's, let's be honest, even the stuff that's bad is not really. There's a lot of other cars that are way worse. We're not having to remove the whole cab to, change a spark plug. There's so many other vehicles that are way worse than Land Rovers, and we complain about them. But, honestly, we're pretty lucky in that they are very serviceable, and they're actually pretty reliable, too, despite what some people say.
And complaining about your Land Rover is, to be fair, part of the hobby.
I think that's why Linus loves them so much.
I agree. I definitely think so. It's, hey, they're a quirky, weird little car from quirky, weird little people. And, we love them. So there you go. But that being said, we've got some exciting stuff coming up as Liza and Jenna are out in the desert right now training up a storm. And we're going to have a bunch of sponsors for the Rebel team here on the show over the next few weeks. We are going to be again at the Camel Trophy 45 event at Eastnor Castle in the UK coming
That's
up.
A big deal.
It's like 2 weeks. Is there 2-3 weeks? It's coming up fast. So if you haven't gotten your tickets for that yet, it is filling up very fast. Last I talked to Michael Bishop, he said it is packed in, and you can get information about that at the Camel Trophy Owners Club website. Hop on there and get your stuff. You can camp, you can hotel, you can dormobile, you can do whatever it is that you'd like.
Be there or be square.
Oh man, it's going to be the event of the century to have Linus and Bob Ives in the same place. Good times.
Tremendous.
I've had the pleasure of seeing that happen once before, and can't wait to see it again.
Sparks will fly.
To see Ike driving a Freelander, it's going to be huge.
Ooh. I don't know. We'll see.
It'll be huge. I can't
Could
wait.
happen.
I'm looking forward to it. So with that, again, it's been a great week, and looking forward to next week. Until then, be well.
Take care.
The Underpowered Hour is produced by Liza Beres, Ike Goss, and me, Steve Beres. Pavel Svardov composed and performed our theme music. Consider supporting the show on Patreon, and if you already do, thank you. Your support makes the show possible. For even more, check out our Instagram or Facebook.